The controversial PDP National Elective Convention comes alive despite two federal high court's judgments ordering a halt of the convention. Amid the fanfare, the elective convention is first hit with the reality that INEC is conspicuously absent to observe the election. But with a few motions in support of the convention continues with the announcement of the dissolution of the Damagun-led NWC.
And I will plead with you to listen very attentively.
Then came the far-reaching decisions of the party to expel the FCT minister, Nyesom Wiki, secretary of the party, Senator Samuel Anyao, and others.
I, Chief Olabode George, hereby move that this convention should expel this person so mentioned above from the People's Democratic Party. I so move.
After hours of voting, Tanimo Turaki emerges the chairman of the party.
On behalf of myself and other members of the newly elected National Working Committee of our party, the People's Democratic Party, I stand before you today and indeed for Nigerians to thank you for putting this confidence in us. I want to thank you for the confidence and the us to be taken for granted.
With the expulsion of the FCT minister Nyesom Wiki, it is left to be seen the legal battles in courts in the coming weeks, as the minister has described the convention and the expulsion as a charade. Mary Chinda, Arise News.
I'm now being joined here on This Day Live on Sunday by Emembong, National Publicity Secretary of the People's Democratic Party. Good to see you.
Good evening, good to see you.
Emembong.
And happy belated birthday.
Yeah, well, you are straight from Ibadan, straight from the convention.
Yes, I had to.
But let's start from the personal to the general to the political. And it is as follows. In June, when Governor Umoeno decided to port from the People's Democratic Party to the APC, you as his commissioner, you served him as commissioner for information, as commissioner for special duties and deep sea port. Now you said no, you will not follow the multitude. You resigned from the administration. You chose to stand alone. Now it looks like in the Ibadan convention, elected convention of the PDP, November 15 to 16. You have now been rewarded for that act of audacity, if I may use that phrase. So, you know, do you feel vindicated? Do you feel like, okay, you know, I've been rewarded for standing by the party?
Thank you very much. It has very little to do with reward. It just has to do with who you are. There are irreducible minimums that you take in every circumstance. And I'm a person who holds fast to the things I believe in. And I like to just stay constant so that I'm not confused myself. You know, there are times, especially when you're in politics, you've served in government, there are times where you are blackmailed and they tell you things that we said about you and you ask yourself, was that me? So I don't like to get confused at that point. So I compare it to a flag and a pole. I prefer to be the pole that is standing in one place and not the flag that is going according to the wind. But I do not have issues with those who have done that. I believe that, for example, I believe that democratization of our country, because there's no country in the world that is practicing pure democracy. So everyone is on a journey towards democracy, and that journey is called democratization. And now the speed at which you travel is dependent on a lot of factors, one of which is competitive political democracy. And so there must be a government in power which is put in place by majority votes of the people. That vote may change per time, but there must also be an opposition capable of holding that government to account for the good of the people. And so in a multi-party system, I believe that we need to hold fast onto that which we believe. Number one. Number two, if you have benefited from a process, for example, I was state publicity secretary of the party. The first time PDP was in opposition, I was state publicity secretary in Akwa Ibom. And I became state publicity secretary. From there, I became commissioner. I'm sure that the party position that I held became the stepping stone to become commissioner, because there are so many people who are qualified. But the work we did then, I became commissioner for information. And by the grace of God and the benevolence of the governors I served, I now became a commissioner for special duties. If this party is suffering crisis today, I shouldn't leave the party. I should wait to see if we can serve the party. It's like a spouse who had cancer and the other spouse stood with you throughout and you recovered, and the other spouse now has pneumonia and you go about broadcasting to the world.
Okay, I get your point, a moral question. However, there is a lot of controversy about this PDP convention in Ibadan, November 15 to 16. Now, on the morning of Friday, there was a ruling by Justice Peter Luifo saying that INEC should not show up because it was an improperly organized convention. By 2:30 p.m., there had been another counter, ruling by the Court of Justice Akintola in Ibadan, also a high court. So in terms of hierarchy, the Federal High Court, the State High Court. And then on the basis of that, your faction of the party decided to hold the convention. As it turned out, INEC officials did not show up to observe that convention. There was some talk about some national election observers and all of that. Do you think that that convention and its outcomes will stand?
Absolutely. You do know that the Electoral Act, which governs the operation of INEC and how political parties operate, including all electoral matters, is clear on that. Section 82 sub 1 makes a mandatory provision for the notice to be given and specifies it must be given, it shall be given, which is mandatory. But sub 2 says INEC may, which leaves it within the realms of discretion. INEC may. It goes on to say, with or without notice, attend and observe. That leaves it to discretion. So for example, and again, because the law cannot command the impossible, it's just like we're here, you placed a call to me. That's your duty, to give a fair hearing. I may or may not. So we cannot command INEC's presence, but INEC has filed in several cases and showed that we gave notice on due time, and they minuted on it. And that is our duty. The duty to observe, to attend and observe, is that of INEC. And so when all of this is over, and you know that the core issues that surround all of this are the issues of jurisdiction, whether the High Court has jurisdiction to hear matters that pertain to internal affairs of the party, whether it is injustice. So, for example, the case that came up on Friday, a court ordered that you must sell form to somebody. And also, with due respect to my lords, all of the cases we filed our notices of appeal and stay of execution, and we're going upstairs. All of these cases will end at the Supreme Court, and I'm sure it would enrich our jurisprudence on these matters. But the operative word, which is why the Electoral Act is very clear, the difference between shall and may. Sub 1 carries shall, which makes it compulsory, mandatory, obligatory. The other one, sub 2, carries may, meaning that INEC, for one reason, maybe for logistics reason, for any other reason, it leaves it within their discretion to attend and observe.
Okay, it's good you are a lawyer. You just raised the question of jurisdiction. Section 84 sub 14 of the Electoral Act talks about jurisdiction, the jurisdiction of the Federal High Court. And then in some decided cases, in a Wafo's case, and also in the case involving Nadi Usman and the Labour Party and another, the point had been made, okay, parties, courts may not interfere into the internal affairs of the party. But the same Supreme Court, Pa Ogunwumiju JSC, as she then was, had pointed out that where there is a violation of the fundamental human rights of a particular party, or, to put it specifically, as in the Waziri versus PDP, that where a political party violates its own constitution, Then, of course, the court can inquire into the matter and say, look, there is a question of equity here. And in this particular case, before the convention in Ibadan, former governor of Adamawa, Jigawa State, Sule Lamido, had gone to court to say that he was excluded. He was not allowed to obtain the form. So don't you foresee that this matter is not settled, that the matter will still can still be litigated upon?
Our disposition, as stated by our national chairman, Turaki Ese, and is clear that we are coming on a reconciliatory and conciliatory note. So there are some issues we'll try. One of the things he said to me was, he will try to wash our dirty linens behind, and as much as possible then. So on the former governor is a great party man, and the question as to the validity or not of what he says is a question of facts. Remember that every nomination, every electoral process has a guideline which was printed and circulated. That guideline stipulates when people will buy forms, stipulates when they will submit the forms. And in each of those cases, so those are the facts behind it. But because Governor Seyi Makinde and other governors and leaders of the party and Nigerians are already talking to His Excellency, the former governor of Jigawa State, we would leave it at that. But remember that these are questions of facts, meaning that were guidelines issued, if answered in the affirmative, were dates set, if answered in the affirmative, did you have to, for example, this program has a time that I was invited, means that I must come within the time. But again, because we respect the sacrifices he has made, people are speaking with him. And that's the part that Turaki SN wants to toe, the part of dialogue, the part of humility, the part of submission. And yesterday he spoke off the cuff, but he said, look, transparency, equity, fairness will be the directive principles of my administration. And we are aligned with it.
As it is of state policy. However, the point is that does not preclude the fact that the aggrieved parties can go to court. For example, 3 states did not attend that convention. Rivers was not there. The delegates did not show up. Sokoto, the delegates were not there. Which state again? Jigawa, they were not there. So where is the path towards reconciliation? And do you think that the boycott by delegates from those three states had any material effect on the outcome of the convention in Ibadan?
Starting from the last, the quorum is 2/3. So assuming they're not considered, for example, Taraba arrived, and you know that to get to Ibadan, if you're flying, you need to get to Lagos, then you start driving. Some people drove. You saw delegates from Zamfara, from everywhere coming in. So the 3 states, assuming they were not there, 2/3 majority. And for every motion to pass, you needed just a simple majority. But does it mean we don't care what's happening there? No, that's not true. You also do know that there are the backroom politics behind. The politics of defection, the politics of people being in this party trying to become placeholders for people in other parties. But we're a fresh administration, so we are careful how we are approaching that, because the chairman of the party wants everyone back. And he says, look, it's possible. It's possible if we show sincerity. It's possible. He's been a public servant. He's been one who has worked with most of the people who are aggrieved. And he clearly mentioned yesterday and said he would go out looking, that he wouldn't wait for them to come. He would go out in search for them. So as to the validity of the convention, by reason of non-attendance of some states, rest assured, we had more than we had. You can see from the votes. Now, as to aggrieved parties going to court, again, like I said, it is the challenge of the judicialization of politics, which again would ultimately lead to the politicization of the judiciary, which is what we are afraid of. Now, so if people exhaust, there are mechanisms. One of the reasons people were expelled yesterday was the fact that there are mechanisms that this party has for dialogue, for conciliation, for negotiation. But some people have an approach that my way or the highway. And they use the court as a means of saying, look, if you don't agree, I go to court. Whereas we need to find democratic ways. The court dockets are already filled with cases that should stimulate the economy. Political cases don't stimulate the economy. Economic cases are suffering. Criminal cases are suffering because of political cases. Look at the speed at which it is determined because of the things that... I hope that criminal cases were determined that fast. Economic cases, if I owed you, if we made a transaction, that it could be determined that fast.
Emembong, you are now the spokesperson of the People's Democratic Party, effective, I understand, from November 9, when the new,
Effective yesterday, we were sworn in.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
You have started work. That's why you are here. You have started work. And I see you have a constitution of the party before you. Now, where in that constitution does the party derive its powers to expel members of the party? Now, this is something we've always asked for on this table. That look ahead of the 2023 general elections. There were anti-party members within the PDP. The PDP could not do anything about them. Now the PDP now says, okay, at the convention in Ibadan, these persons, including Fayose, including Wiki, including Bature, including Anyanwu, and others, that they have been expelled. Now, the people have been expelled. They say it's a joke that, you guys just stage a comedy, a skit in Ibadan. So, I mean, where is the constitution in this? And why are chieftains of the party, including Chief Olabode George, now quoting the constitution, whereas they seem to have slept on their rights since 2023? That's the leadership of the party.
But you do know that indiscipline is not time-bound. You do know that. So but
they were sleeping. Everybody was urging them.
There's always a time for a wake-up. There's always a time for... There's never a late time to do what is right. But again, because of the disposition of the national chairman, we will be very reserved in making comments on this. Because there are comments we make that may exacerbate the situation. And the national chairman has said, gentlemen, can you allow me handle this? The convention took its decision. That's the decision of the convention. The convention is the highest law-making body of the organization. It took its decision. And if you watch the video, Doctor, you see the resounding appreciation and acceptance of that. But however, the chairman who emerged from that process, who should celebrate that process, says, no, I want everyone back in the fold. So we'll be careful. But as to the powers of the convention to undertake disciplinary action, Article 33 sub 2J says, which speaks to the convention, says, shall exercise control and take disciplinary action against all officers and members of the party. And the motion that was used, that was presented for that decision to be listed item by item, including anti-democratic. Now, the issue is not even anti-party only, anti-democratic.
My question is, why now? After playing possum over that same section of the Constitution.
If not now, when? The same question, if it was done, you see, there are times when you try to exercise patience. You hope that time can heal. But there are times when you discover that rather than heal, time compounds. And therefore, you must take a decision. So, for example, if someone suffers from cancer, what do you do first? You would be, depending on the state of the cancer, you'll be placed on medication. If the medication doesn't work, you'll be placed on chemotherapy. If it doesn't work, they say, look, man, we have to do a procedure. So there's a process, because I mean, these are not small people. These are cherished people. These are top political players. None of them is a featherweight. None of them would any party of note, including even the ruling party, just wake up and sweep away. So this shows you the process. But we are coming in new. And the chairman is saying, irrespective of legacy issues, can you allow me the opportunity to see if we can build back?
Okay, so will it be correct to say that the PDP is a dysfunctional political family, divided, which has moved from the intensive care unit that Senator Suswam talked about now to perhaps the mortuary?
No, you see, again, everything depends on positionality, just like research. Your positionality depends on what you see. And most times what we see comes from our worldview. So that is why I do not question people's subjectivity. But if you were on that field yesterday, if you were in Ibadan yesterday, if you boarded commercial vehicles and listened to people, you would have known that indeed this is that defining moment that can birth a rebirth, that can bring a renaissance to the party. You would have seen hope. You would see that some people who came by road missed their part. People who are riding Okada led them to where they were going to free of charge. And they said, can you rebuild this party? That is where it is. But I do not have the opportunity to question people's subject. It is their reality. If someone says it's an ICU, check. Then maybe the person is very conversant with ICUs. If someone says in a mortuary, maybe the person is very conversant with mortuary. But
nobody goes to the mortuary and returns.
No, but maybe he or she has lost 6, 7 people. There is a way, or maybe the person is a mortician. So you would have lost so many people that you think that everything is a carpenter sees everything as a nail and sees a hammer. So I can't question a carpenter's subjectivity.
Okay, 2 governors. The governor of Adamawa, Governor Fintiri, and also the governor of Plateau State, Governor Caleb Mutfwang. They have said categorically that they are not part of this expulsion drama. And these are principal members of the party. What are your concerns about that?
The 2 gentlemen you've mentioned, alongside their colleagues of Zamfara, Oyo, Deleke was represented by his deputy governor. Excellent gentlemen who have contributed, and the chairman of the PDP Governors Forum, Bala Mohammed, they have contributed greatly to the success of the convention yesterday. And if you read, and they are very responsible gentlemen and politicians, they excluded themselves. They did not question the validity. They did not question the legality. Rather, they questioned the morality and the management. But again, remember that this is a convention where in democracy, majority will have their way, minority will have their say. And they mentioned their personal dissent and objection to a particular item. There were more than 4 motions moved yesterday. And so you can imagine that per motion, some people may not have. But in any ways, a voice vote was taken in all of those motions and no nay was taken. However, these are prominent members.
You know, all these, those who say, hey, raise your hand, those who say nay.
They are not here.
We see how they manipulate that process.
They are not here. You know, usually they say the nays are not here. But away from that, we respect the fact that they have spoken out, but even at that, they are not seeking to destroy the party. None of them has condemned the process, but they have mentioned that this particular motion doesn't sit well with them. And the national chairman of the party has registered those concerns and is going to discuss with them.
Okay, finally, as we begin to wrap up, do you think that Governor Fintiri and Governor Mutfwang, that they are weakest men, and that maybe that's why they express reservations? And what's the general mood about the expulsion, in particular, of Minister Nyesom Wiki?
Well, the Minister of the FCT is almost everybody's friend. I mean, I've been in the PDP long enough to know that he fights for anything he believes in. You know, when we're serving in Akwa Ibom, he's friends with Udom Emmanuel. I don't know whether they are weakest people. I don't know. But I know that they have expressed their individual dissent about something, and which is what the national chairman, Turaki SAN, is saying, I will discuss with them. Because the days of people making complaints and you don't listen, over. Everyone who has had, and Turaki SAN commended the outgone National Working Committee. You do not know what it is to walk in someone's shoes until you've done so. They piloted the affairs of a party at a very turbulent times. And when we look at it and we say, oh, they could have done better, people would say, you have your opinion, but you do not know, because that's simply counterfactual thinking. You don't know what they went through. You don't know what the options would have been. You only know what they did. So I can assure you, I don't know who is anybody. We do know that all of them are PDP people. They are PDP leaders. They are PDP governors. And for this convention to hold, all of those governors, all of the leaders, members of the BOT, they went an extra mile, committed their resources, their time, their energy, and they were there physically. That counts for something. It counts for respect.
Emembong, well, I see you are in familiar territory. You've been doing this job at the state level. Now, you've been dragged into the national politics. But before you go, a couple of other matters relating to the Minister of Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wiki, who on Thursday issued a rebuttal over things that were said or not said during his confrontation earlier in the week with one naval lieutenant, A.M. Yerima, in Abuja. The said property was linked to a former chief of naval staff. Speaking with journalists, Wiki dismissed reports suggesting that he had a personal axe to grind with the Nigerian military, emphasizing that he has great respect for the military institution and that the controversy had been exaggerated by individuals seeking to create the impression of a rift. The minister stated that his actions have always been guided by law, not sentiment or emotion.
So many people have had problems. Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, former general, former head of state, former president, he will call me on phone. Minister, I look good at this problem of land here. I say, please carry. I will solve the problem. That is former head of state too. I respect the institutions. And I know what it takes. Even as a governor, nobody, no governor will say that they supported the military that more than me. So I know. But how do you see a private individual knowing fully well that you are against the law? It is not military versus government, no. If it was military, I would have written to them that, look, military, why are you doing this? This is a private individual. Land was not allocated to him. Land was allocated to a company called Santos. Listen, in 2007 for parks and recreation. You send this to start beating government officials. Not private, but government officials, beating them. Senior government officials, you were beating. Some people say I said before you're a fool. And what I meant was this. You cannot be carrying out an illegal order. That's what I meant. And you say me very fool. I couldn't have said that.
Meanwhile, Minister of State for Defense, Bello Matawalle, has shed more light on the public spark between his Federal Capital Territory colleague, Nyesom Wiki, and a naval officer, Lieutenant Commander A.M. Yerima, saying that Wiki disregarded the advice of some service chiefs and proceeded to confront the officer at a disputed property site in Abuja. Matawalle stated that the naval officer acted strictly in accordance with instructions and displayed discipline and respect throughout the encounter. The explanation came as after Minister of Defense Mohammed Badaru reaffirmed the federal government's commitment to protecting and safeguarding officers of the armed forces while performing their lawful duties. Badaru also cautioned against actions that could undermine the authority, professionalism, or dignity of uniformed personnel in the discharge of their responsibilities. Well, as you begin to wrap up, Emembong, any comment on this member of your political party, as he then was, taking on a whole institution called the military, even if after the fact he lies about what was recorded, what was heard, what was seen by everyone else. And then the military says, well, this is an act of affront against a major institution in the country. Very briefly.
Well, for me, I think that we need to have mutual respect for each other. And we need to stop where the law says, where everyone needs to be subject to the laws of the land. And so if we start with mutual respect, if we all have emotional intelligence, we would avoid a lot of things. But again, there are so many things that happen in the spur of the moment. Recently, because of this, I've been having a lot of feeds on my Facebook showing the training these people undergo to put their lives on the line. And when you remember the recent incident that happened, and you know that in other climes that even to board a plane, they allow ex-military people and serving military people to. I mean, people just want to. They have discounts. They just want to find a way to make life beautiful for them. Because I mean, if guns are being fired at somewhere, and you will be running, and people will be approaching. So. But on the whole, within the concept of a democracy, I think that military-civil relations, especially with political authority, maybe we're not getting it right. We must be able to know what stops where the other one. But for me, the most important thing is we need to respect each other, irrespective of age. We need to be able, I need to see you like you came, you had to come receive me. You didn't need to do that, but that is civility. Because you confer dignity of human person on the other person. Immediately, each of us confer dignity of human person on the other person in our mode of speech, in our mode of actions. A lot of problems will be solved. We may have the laws, But if people don't act according to the laws, and you know there are always loopholes, you know, within the ambit of the law. So for me, I think that backstage, a lot of this should be handled backstage. These are two critical things, you know, that at a time like this, we shouldn't be having, you know, and again, this is a time when the military has been given a marching order to ensure that terrorism, banditry, killings are stopped. We don't need to distract the military. We need to allow them to be in the theaters where they need to be.
Okay, so if you were the one who had been called a fool, will you have responded with a dirty slap? Now that they say your convention in Ibadan was dirty December in November.
No. You see, you know that the law allows you to respond in the way to which the attack came. So if someone uses his mouth, you use your mouth. If someone uses his hand, and you feel free to use your hand, then you can respond in the heat of passion. But we do not encourage that. But again, it's not something we're happy about, and I trust that the authorities will handle it backstage.
Okay.
You see, I'm really trying to refrain from commenting on.
I know. You're just taking the job. If the convention starts, you will have a lot more talking to do.
No, so that I don't spoil things for the new chairman who is getting. Let's allow him the liberty, the space, the ambience to resolve issues. But I mean, if in the course of time people fire shots at us, I mean, it's.
You will respond in like manner. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Emembong for joining us on This Day Live, the Sunday talk show.